All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast, where we're doing our first game preview of the season. Actually, opening day is tomorrow. If you are enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. But we're going to dive right into Florida and Arizona being held in Las Vegas. Marcus, what are your initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, obviously, opening night, this is a really fun game. Defending national champs against this new look Arizona team without Caleb Love. Henry Basar left for UNC, of course. KJ Lewis is gone. It's a whole new looking Arizona roster full of plenty of youth, right? They're going to have three or four freshmen that play pretty solid roles, especially like Koa Peat, Brayden Burries, Dwayne Aristode. It's going to be a fun matchup where this Arizona team I think is really going to try and push the pace against. It's going to be their MO anyway, but against this Florida team that now they're going to most likely be sliding Tommy Houck up to the three for a good chunk of minutes. So they're going to be playing a little bit bigger. So I think it is going to be an area where Arizona is really going to try and push it out there, get Florida on their heels a little bit. Now, the counter to that, of course, is that Florida is arguably the best offensive rebounding team in the country. So, if Arizona is going to be looking to push the pace, they need to be making sure they're going to be securing defensive rebounds. So they're going to have to at least go to the defensive glass and not leak out and in transition. Otherwise, they're just going to give up 25 offensive rebounds and get slammed there. But I think this is going to be a really fun matchup. I'm really intrigued to see how Florida looks. Obviously, you see some stuff from the preseason from their game from Illinois on Twitter, but you don't really know how it's going to translate, how it's going to look when it's for real. So now playing a really quality opponent here in Arizona, who I think may take a little bit of time to get up to speed just with so many young pieces. But I do think this will be a fun game to kick off the season.
Cody, what are your initial thoughts for this season opener?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just excited for the season to get started. I'd be glad with really any game that we got here, but the fact that we got like a marquee top 15 matchup on opening night is going to be great. It's going to be a real clash of I'd say similar styles. I mean, teams that want to run a ton, like this game's projected 75 possessions. That's like among the highest amount of possessions on any game on opening night that's projected anyway. And there's going to be, both of these teams are going to play with a ton of physicality. Like, it's going to be a real battle on the glass. Both teams want to assert themselves up front. And obviously I think you could give Florida the edge in that regard with the four bigs that they have and in how Condon and Chinyelu, who are all going to play together. And then you have Handlockton coming off the bench against, a really good front line with Arizona as well. And Koa Peat, Krivas, Awaka, Karchenkov on the wing is like a real physical presence at 6'7". So that's going to be very intriguing to watch. And obviously both teams want to get up and down, want to play in transition as frequently as possible. I would give Florida the edge because they're able to prevent transition at a higher level. They can crash the glass with two or three guys and still have enough to get back in transition, as opposed to Arizona, who needs to do it a little bit more by committee, at least when comparing it to Florida. So, but another thing I'm interested to watch is just, how this perimeter group of Florida is going to operate from the get-go. I know Marcus mentioned, Tommy Houck playing the three, and I'm going to need to see his perimeter skills take another step forward, which I think they can. Like, he took a major step from his freshman to his sophomore year. I kind of need to see it again with his shooting ability. Maybe he can do it a little bit more off the bounce. I know he can attack closeouts and get to the rim from there, but I need to see, just a little bit more on the bone with his shooting ability. And another thing I'm interested to see is how Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee kind of operate together. Are they going to play together for all of their minutes? Are they going to stagger those minutes and try to add in Klavchar, try to add in, CJ Ingram, which I think he's going to play a role at some point. Tommy Houck's going to slide up to the 4 and play those minutes with Condon at the 5. So I am very intrigued to see kind of the rotations in which Florida uses. And, for Arizona, I'm kind of interested to see what their shot diet is going to look like on night number 1. Because when I look at it on paper, I see a lot of guys on this roster that really like to operate in the mid-range. and that starts with Jaden Bradley, who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Like, he's very comfortable in getting to his spots in the mid range, but Florida kind of welcomes that. I know they kind of switch their pick and roll coverages at times, but I think they're going to be okay with these guys knocking down jump shots in the mid range. There's not a ton of like fantastic catch and shoot options on this Arizona roster besides like an Anthony Dell'Orso. I think Burries is capable of knocking down the three. Out of the guys that are, outside of Dell'Orso, I think he's the number one guy, but he's a guy that really likes to operate in the mid range as well. And then I think the guy I'm most interested to see how he competes on night number one is Koa Peat against this front court. From what I've seen in the exhibitions, like his shot diet's been pretty mid-range heavy. Like I want to see him get to the rim a little bit more. It's going to be very tough for him to do that against this Florida front court, but I am very interested to see if he can hold his own on night number one, because I think he's a really talented player, really good two-way rebounder. Is going to be a real big factor on the offensive glass, but I need to see him like not settle for mid-range jumpers as much, because that's what Florida really wants him to take.
Yeah, with Florida being the favorite, Marcus, I'm going to send it back over to you. What is Arizona's keys of the game to kind of steal a win from Florida, knock off the defending champs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts, as we've talked about with Florida all last March and into this season, is limiting offensive rebound opportunities. They need to, obviously you're not going to be able to shut them down in that area, but can you limit them enough to make the shot volume battle relatively similar? And then on the offensive end for Arizona, can you get to the rim at a higher rate? Can you make some catch and shoot threes, which, as Cody alluded to, that was one of our main concerns coming into the year, is this Arizona offense doesn't have a ton of catch and shoot guys on this roster. Like you said, Burries can probably be one of those guys. Dell'Orso is good there, of course, but he doesn't provide a ton of value off the bounce. So, I think it's a lot of that, right? It's a mid-range heavy diet that Florida is going to welcome. We saw last year with Arizona, just a team that takes a lot of poor shots. That was the head of the snake was Caleb Love of that. He's gone, but, it still doesn't really seem to be looking a lot different. So, I think they need to take good shots, as cliche as that might sound. They need to get to the rim, maybe knock down a few threes and get out and run, really, put Florida on their heels a little bit. Because, they just, it's what they're going to have to do to take down this type of team. Florida, of course, in the front court is just so dominant. But yeah, that's how I see it. I just think it's just a tough one for Arizona on opening night to walk into. I expect it to be like a semi-close game, but I just think that Florida's experience here, their size in the front court, is ultimately going to win out. They're full of experience now at this point. Know how to win big games. And Arizona, like I mentioned, they're going to have 3 or 4 guys that play big roles that are all freshmen. Jaden Bradley's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. You've got Krivas, who missed most of last season. I just think with Arizona, they're going to get there, but I think it might just take a little bit longer. So for me, I see this as a Florida win on opening night.
And Cody, what is Florida's keys to the game? What do they have to do to stop an Arizona upset?
Yeah, I just think they have to keep them away from the rim, really. And, kind of all the things I mentioned just about being willing to give up those mid-range jump shots. They don't really have to change much from really a game plan perspective, but on the defensive end at least. But one thing that they need to do on the offensive end, they need to knock down perimeter shots. Like, that's something that I need to see them do, particularly with Tommy Haug. Like, Arizona's going to play more of this shell defensively. We kind of saw this from them last year. They're willing to give up off the dribble threes. They'll go under screens very often. They're trying to keep Florida. They're trying to keep teams away from the rim, and they did a pretty good job of that last year. And obviously, Florida wants to attack the rim with very high volume, like guys like Condon and Chinyelu, and obviously Tommy Haug off the bounce or through the post, or however that may be. But yeah, I'm going to need to see Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee play off of each other like very well. And I've had concerns with Xavier Lee's catch and shoot game, throughout his career at Princeton. I know it was like fairly low volume, but I need to see him play off the ball at a high level. And then, I need to see a guy come off the bench and knock down shots at a high clip as well. So I don't think it's really like a runaway. And I do think this game could realistically go either way. This is a clash of very similar styles and two very, very physical teams. And it could ultimately come down to depth here at one point. There could be a bunch of fouls. I know we've seen a bunch of fouls in the preseason. We've seen a bunch of free throws, and it could just be a war of attrition, really. And I think Florida in the front court probably has a slight edge. But ultimately, I mean, I could see Arizona win this game. I'll take Florida in a tight one. I'll say they win by 3 or 4.
Anything else to add before we sign off here?
No, I mean, I guess just to wrap things up, I'm just excited, as Cody kind of hit on at the beginning, like the season's finally back, and now we've got basketball for what, 6 months straight now, up through the beginning of April, so or 5 months. So it's awesome to have back.
Yeah, this is a great way to kick off the season. We're going to wrap things up here. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.